My name is Captain Claire Hartley. I am 33 years old. I have been an intelligence analyst for 10 years. And on a Monday morning in September, I arrived at Forward Operating Base Meridian and found my name already on the duty roster. Not added that morning, not penciled in after my arrival was confirmed. Dated yesterday, Sunday, the day before my deployment orders had been issued. I stood at the administration desk and looked at the roster the duty sergeant had handed me for signature. Standard procedure. You sign in, you confirm your details, you take your assignment. My name was there, my rank, my service number, and the date beside it was Sunday, September 14th. My deployment orders had been signed on Monday, September 15th. I had been placed on this roster before anyone officially knew I was coming. I signed the sheet, I took my assignment, I went to my quarters, and I sat on the edge of the bunk and I thought very carefully about what I had just seen. Let me tell you about FOB Meridian first. I had completed a tour there 2 years earlier, 7 months, signals intelligence work, standard posting. I had arrived, done the work, been reassigned when the tour ended, and moved on. Nothing remarkable had happened there, or so I had believed. The base was mid-sized, a signals intelligence hub, the kind of installation that processes information from multiple sources and routes it upward through the chain. Important work, unglamorous work, the kind that happens in rooms without windows and produces reports that other people act on. I had done it for 7 months. I had filed my reports, I had been reassigned, I had not thought about Meridian again until Monday morning when new deployment orders landed in my inbox, with Meridian as the destination. The orders had given no specific reason: temporary analytical support, standard language for a short-term posting. I had assumed it was routine. The duty roster told me it was not. The object that I kept returning to in the first hour was the roster itself. Not a copy. I did not have a copy. I had signed the original and it had been taken back by the duty sergeant in the ordinary way. But I had read it carefully before I signed. 10 years of intelligence work had built a habit of reading things carefully before committing to them. The duty sergeant had waited with the specific patience of someone accustomed to officers taking longer than necessary with paperwork. I had read every column: my name, Captain C. Hartley, service number correct, assignment, Signals Analysis Division, Room 7, reporting date, Monday, September 15th, entry date, Sunday, September 14th, 1 day before my orders existed. I had read it twice to be certain. Then I had signed and handed it back and said thank you, and walked to my quarters with the information filed in the specific, careful way I filed things that did not yet have an explanation. The first thing I did in my quarters was sit with the question, not reach for my phone, not contact Morrison, not do anything that could be observed or logged or traced. Sit with the question. Who at FOB Meridian had known I was coming before my orders were issued? The orders had been signed by my commanding officer, Major Daniel Webb, on Monday morning. I had received them at 0743. I had been on a transport by 1100. I had arrived at Meridian at 1530. For my name to be on the roster dated Sunday, someone at Meridian would have needed to know I was coming before Webb signed the orders, which meant either Webb had informed someone at Meridian before signing the official orders, or someone at Meridian had known through a different channel entirely, a channel that did not pass through Webb at all. Both possibilities were serious. The second one was worse, because if someone at Meridian had known through a separate channel, then someone had access to information about my movements that operated outside my official chain of command. Someone had been tracking me and had placed my name on a roster to tell me so.
I want to tell you about the second thing I noticed. Room 7. My assignment was Signals Analysis Division, Room 7. During my previous tour at Meridian 2 years earlier, I had worked in Room 7 for the first 3 months before being moved to Room 12 when the division was reorganized. Room 7 was not a standard assignment for a newly arrived officer. It was a specific room, a room I had specific history with, a room that someone would have to know about from my previous tour to assign me to. My previous tour records were in my service file, accessible to people with the appropriate clearance, but assigning me specifically to Room 7 was not random. It was a message. Someone at Meridian knew my history there and wanted me to know they knew. I made tea on the small kettle that was on the shelf above my bunk. This is what I do when something requires thinking before acting. I have done it since my second year. The kettle is a signal to myself. Slow down, think first, act after. I made the tea and I sat with it, and I built the picture from what I had. Fact 1. My name on the roster dated 1 day before my orders existed. Fact 2. My assignment to a specific room with significance to my previous tour. Fact 3. A deployment to a base I had served at before with no stated reason beyond temporary analytical support. 3 facts, each one individually explainable: a clerical error on the date, a coincidental room assignment, a routine posting. Together, they formed something that was not a coincidence. Someone at Meridian had constructed this situation deliberately. The question was whether they had constructed it to harm me or to communicate something to me. I thought about that distinction for a long time. Then I picked up my phone. I did not call Morrison. Not yet. I called the number of someone I had served with during my first tour at Meridian, a woman named Sergeant Anna Reyes, who had been my operations specialist for 4 of the 7 months, and who had been reassigned to a different posting 18 months ago. She answered on the 3rd ring. Before I could say anything, she said, "I wondered when you would call."
Anna talked for 22 minutes. I am going to give you the shape of what she told me, not every detail. Some of it is still part of proceedings I cannot discuss fully. During my first tour at Meridian 2 years earlier, I had processed signals intelligence from a specific operational area. I had filed reports through the standard chain. The reports had been received, acknowledged, and filed. Or so I had believed. Anna had been in room 7 with me for the first 3 months. She had processed the same signals. She had seen the same data. After I left Meridian, she had remained for another 4 months before her own reassignment. In those 4 months, she had discovered something. 3 of the reports I had filed during my tour, reports I had written and submitted through official channels, had been altered before they reached their final destination. Not substantially, precisely. Small changes to specific figures, adjustments to signal strength readings and timing data that on their own would seem like minor corrections. But the 3 reports were connected. They covered the same operational area across 3 separate months, and the adjustments, taken together across all 3, changed the analytical conclusion. My original reports had identified a pattern in the signals data, a pattern that indicated something specific about activity in that operational area. The altered versions had obscured that pattern. Someone had changed my work to hide what I had found. Anna had discovered the alterations by accident, a misplaced file, an original draft she had kept without realizing she had kept it, a discrepancy between her memory of what the data showed and what the filed report stated. She had spent 18 months since her reassignment quietly building the case, carefully, without telling anyone who might be connected to whoever had made the alterations. When she heard I had received new deployment orders to Meridian, she had accessed the roster system and placed my name there the night before, to warn me, to make sure I arrived knowing that something was wrong. The roster was her signal to me. Room 7 was her confirmation that it was her. She had known I would read it carefully. She had known I would understand. I want to pause here, because sitting on a bunk in a room at FOB Meridian, understanding that a woman I had served with for 4 months had spent 18 months protecting evidence on my behalf and had placed my name on a roster as a signal is the moment this story became something larger than a deployment.
If you have ever had someone act on your behalf before you knew you needed it, drop a comment below. And subscribe right now, because what Anna had built in 18 months and what we did with it in the next 72 hours is the part that changed everything.
I called Morrison at 1847. She answered before the second ring finished. I told her everything in 7 minutes. The roster, the date, room 7, Anna's call, the 3 altered reports, the 18 months of documentation Anna had built quietly from a reassigned posting. Morrison was quiet for 9 seconds. Then she said, "Does Anna still have the original drafts?" I said, "She has everything. Time-stamped, formatted, indexed. She has been building it for 18 months. She called it the cleanest evidence file she has ever constructed, and she is not someone who uses that language lightly." Morrison said, "I need her to transmit nothing digitally. I am sending someone to her location directly. Where is she? Posted." I told her. Morrison said, "And you? You are at Meridian now." I said, "Yes, assigned to room 7, reporting tomorrow morning." Morrison said, "Report as normal. Do the work you were sent to do. Do not access the original signal records from your previous tour unless it is required by your current assignment. Do not indicate to anyone that you have spoken to Anna or to me." She said, "Claire, the person who altered those reports had access to the signals filing system at the level of your chain of command during your previous tour. That means someone in the oversight structure at Meridian 2 years ago made those changes." She said, "They may still be here." I said, "I know." She said, 72 hours. Can you be normal for 72 hours? I thought about the tea I had made. I thought about Anna placing my name on a roster on a Sunday evening so I would arrive knowing. I said, "I have been normal in harder rooms than this one." Morrison said, "I know you have. 72 hours. The 72 hours. I reported to room 7 at 800 Tuesday morning. The room was familiar in the way that places are familiar when you have spent significant time in them and then returned after an absence. Same layout, different equipment, the same particular quality of light from the overhead panels that I had spent 4 months working under. I did the work I had been sent to do. Signals analysis, current operational data, nothing connected to my previous tour, nothing that required me to access historical files. I was completely normal. I ate in the mess. I answered questions about my previous posting. I made observations about the current signals picture that were accurate and useful and gave nothing away. On the second day, a senior officer named Major Richard Cole stopped by room 7. He introduced himself. He said he remembered my previous tour. He said I had done good work. He said he was glad I was back. I thanked him. I noted that he had been at Meridian during my previous tour. I noted that his access level would have included the signals filing system. I noted nothing else. I continued my work. He left. I added his name to a mental list I had been building since Monday evening. On the third day, Morrison's people arrived. They came at 0600 Thursday, before the base was fully active, 4 of them, 2 in uniform, 2 in civilian clothes. I was already in room 7 when they arrived. I had been there since 0530 because I had not slept well and working was better than lying awake. By 900, the relevant systems had been accessed and the alteration records had been pulled. Every change to a filed document leaves a trace in the system if you know where to look and have the authority to look there. Morrison's team knew where to look. By 1100, they had confirmed Anna's findings and extended them. The 3 reports I had identified were not the only ones. 7 reports, multiple analysts, 18 months. A systematic effort to conceal what the signals data was showing. At 1347, Major Richard Cole was asked to report to the administration building. He did not come out of it the same way he went in. The investigation ran for 6 months.
I was not at Meridian for most of it. I was reassigned after the first week once my role as a witness was established and my continued presence at the base was assessed as potentially compromising. I testified 4 times, written statements, formal interviews, each one methodical, each one building on the picture that Anna had started 18 months earlier from a reassigned posting with a misplaced file and a memory that something did not match. Cole was not the primary subject. He was part of a structure that had been managing the concealment. Above him in that structure were 2 more officers, both investigated, both charged. The signals data that had been obscured across those 7 reports, the pattern that had been systematically hidden, was finally assessed accurately. I cannot say what the assessment revealed. It is classified and it is not mine to share publicly. What I can say is that it mattered, that the people whose job it was to act on it finally received it in its true form, that the 18 months of concealment had caused delays whose consequences I was briefed on in general terms, and which I think about sometimes in the specific way of someone who knows what was hidden without being able to say what the hiding cost. Cole is serving 8 years. The 2 officers above him received sentences of 6 and 9 years respectively. Anna received a formal commendation. She attended the ceremony in her dress uniform and accepted it with the specific composure of someone who had spent 18 months being careful and was relieved the carefulness was over. I flew to her posting to be there. I sat in the 3rd row. When they called her name, I stood up. Not loudly, not disruptively, I just stood up. She saw me when she turned from the podium. She did not break her composure, but she held my eyes for a moment, in the way that people hold each other's eyes when something has been done and completed, and the cost of it has been shared. The duty roster from that Monday is in the evidence archive, Exhibit 3 in the case file. My name, dated Sunday, 1 day before my orders existed. Anna had accessed the roster system on a Sunday evening from her posting and placed my name there because she needed me to arrive knowing, because she had spent 18 months building something that required 1 more person to complete it, and she had decided that person was me. She had been right. The roster had worked exactly as she intended. I had read it carefully. I had understood. I had called her before I called anyone else.
My current supervisor asked me once about the Meridian posting, what I had learned from it. I said, I learned that the most important messages are sometimes the ones that are not in the official system. He said, meaning? I said, meaning someone placed my name on a roster to tell me something the official system would not have told me. The unofficial signal was the one that mattered, the one that started everything. He said, how did you know to read it that way? I thought about it. I said, because I have been trained to notice when something is 1 day off. He said, and what do you do when something is 1 day off? I said, I make tea, I sit with it, and then I make the right call. He laughed. He did not know about the kettle, but he understood the principle. Here is what a duty roster dated 1 day too early taught me. Pay attention to the small things that are slightly wrong, not the large, obvious errors. Those announce themselves. Those are easy. The small ones, the date that is 1 day off, the room assignment that is too specific to be random, the deployment to a base you have history with and no stated reason for returning to. These are the things that carry the message, and the message is almost always from someone who could not say it directly. Someone who needed you to be paying attention, someone who trusted that you would be. Anna spent 18 months building something alone because she did not yet have the person she needed to bring it to completion. Then she placed a name on a roster on a Sunday evening and trusted that the name's owner would read carefully. Read carefully, always. The message might be 1 day off, but it will be there. Drop a comment and tell me your story. I read every single one. And subscribe. I am here every week with a new story. She noticed, she documented, she made the call,
and she did not stop until it was done.